Hello, this is our April members get together Q&A session, and Mel's joined us today. Mel, hi, darling.
Hello.
This is Helen and Sam,
Hi.
and we might get another couple of members joining us. Sadly, I forgot about doing a little promo about this until this morning. So thank you guys for being.
It was in your letter at the beginning of the week.
Yeah, but do you think anyone, well, you read it. Thank you for reading it. I put a little reminder out this morning. And I thought that given that we've just had April focus on pelvic core and all of the classes in the Women's Wellbeing Pathway 1, 2, 3, I've been having a bit more of a focus on, for the Release and Replenish class, that ability to connect into the pelvic bowl, release congestion and tension patterns, and absolutely regulate the nervous system. So we've been really focusing on, vagus nerve practices to regulate the nervous system, and doing that in conjunction with the pelvis. In the Posture and Pelvic Core Restore class, just sort of really focusing on not just the strengthening tactics, and I have been obviously showing you some the full Uddiyana Bandha, which is that full vacuum, especially useful for prolapse. So we have been doing that in several of the classes, but also just really emphasizing that connection between the diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm and how instrumental that is. And also something I wanted to touch on today is alignment, so posture. You literally can't get good pelvic core health if you are not looking after your alignment as well. And then in the Hatha strength class, amping up exercises, muscle and bone strengthening exercises, but with a real focus on everything coming from that core. And that's where we all kind of want to be heading, that stage 3 and beyond. It's become so apparent to me that many teachers out there are teaching strengthening exercise as if we're little men, and not taking into account the uniquely female pelvis, and especially if you have given birth. Once postnatal, always postnatal. So I thought today I'd just do Q&A, get some questions that you might have after this month, but also just give you my top couple of tips, and this is out of all the stuff that I teach. I thought I'll just pull down a couple of things which I feel would benefit all women, to incorporate on a kind of daily basis if possible. Yeah, so let's just start with questions. Anyone got something that just like, I'm not quite sure about this, and can I ask?
I don't know, maybe talk, and then they might come out of that.
Okay, cool. All right, so my 3 things, and I was thinking, oh golly, do I talk about bladder as opposed to bowel health? And because obviously we want to make sure that we are able to train our bladders so our bladders don't rule our lives, but really important to be able to understand when you do need a poo, and do a poo, and use, if possible, look, here's me squatting on a squatty potty at the moment so that I can be in a squatting position to sit, but using one of these things underneath your feet when you're on the loo, so that you can, hang on, I'll just go grab a chair here, so that you can put yourself in a squatting position. So bowel health, super important that we are able to put ourselves in a squatting position. We're not designed, our pipes aren't designed to sit here. So if you have got any problems with elimination, and straining on the loo is, at our age, is going to exacerbate prolapse. So we really don't want to strain on the loo. This kind of thing where you are putting, you can see, leaning forward, hinging from the hip joints, knees wide, you're in a squatting position. Now my pipes are going straight down, not slightly underneath me. So this kind of position, and being able to loosen the jaw, pelvic floor deeply correlated, fascially connected. So, doing your vocal toning, long breath out, relaxing, taking time, not going, oh God, I kind of need a poo, or I've got to be dashing out and try to squeeze in elimination amongst busy life. So one thing I was thinking about was just emphasizing how we've got to train our bladders so that they don't rule our lives, get out of the pattern of going just in case. Eat pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds are fantastically toning for the bladder. You can spend a fortune on Jude capsules, but eat pumpkin seeds. And when it comes to poo, constipation, in most of my classes, I talk about constipation, and we do movements to help relieve congestion in the pelvic area. Constipation is the #1 driver of urinary incontinence as well, and it's just something which we really need to get on top of in midlife. If we're constipated, we tend to reabsorb estrogen and become estrogen dominant. So really important to do the things, the diet, the fiber, the twisting movements, the alignment, the breath work, the squatty potty, all the things to make sure that you poo well. So I will make that one of my things, actually. I will make that one of my things. I wasn't going to, but I will. The things I was going to talk about is breath. Because when we're shallow breathing, we are in the sympathetic nervous system. When we are just using this type of breath, and when we're mouth breathing, when we're rapidly breathing, we're kind of like monkeys, and our minds are like monkeys as well. We call it the monkey mind. So when we are slow breathing and when we are diaphragmatically breathing, so using the lower lobes of our lungs, where we have most of our lung capacity, when we are stretching the breath, so that's why I use the accordion metaphor, you're opening the accordion and then pressing the accordion closed, we naturally start to lengthen the exhalation. And the parasympathetic nervous system, so we've got the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, can only really be activated, or we can only really go into that state when we are slow breathing, when we feel safe. When you slow breathe, you're telling your brain that you're safe. So when we have muscles like the psoas muscles that are holding all of our tension, and it's showing up as terrible lower back pain or hip pain or pelvic tension, then invariably it's the first thing we've got to look at before we try and do any stretches, any manual manipulations, any chiro visits and all the rest of it, is to look at what's happening with our breathing and start to learn to slow and stretch the breath. That's why I do so many kind of lateral stretches to open up the intercostal muscles between the ribs. We do a lot of work to get the diaphragm sitting on top of the pelvic diaphragm, so not lifted, not tucked, and emphasizing that focus on the lower lobes of the back of the lungs. So this is something we can control. Like, we can't control our heart rate necessarily. We can't directly right now control what's happening in the bowels, and we can with our food and things, but you know what I mean. But we can quite rapidly learn to control the nervous system through our breathing. And obviously there's more to it than just that. It's, what's happening in the mind. It's changing your environment, changing the thought patterns that, that pop up like electrical impulses. They're like popcorn, pop, 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 pop. So learning how to slow all that stuff down, but that happens as part of regulating your breath. And when we add in vocal toning, so the buzzy bee, so all these lovely breaths that yoga gives us, the buzzy bee breath, Brahmahari breath, when we do the physiological sigh, you know, all of these little techniques that we've got, that I always encapsulate the Monday night class, you know, the release and replenish class. I always encapsulate the movements with these extended exhalation breaths so that we get kind of more bang for our buck. Yeah. So whilst we are going into, say, an inversion where we are naturally extending the exhalation because heart is higher than head, we'll also be doing a bit of a vocal toning, fuller, low vibrational tone to the exhalation, to that, so that our brain is like, we're safe, we're safe, we're safe, we're safe. And those muscles can, which have been holding all of our stuff, can just start to open and release. So that was my main. I just want to say, notice your breathing. And if you're mouth breathing, give me a call, because we have got to talk. We've got to get on top of being able to breathe in through the nostrils, use the goiter, use that constriction that the Ujjayi breath gives us. Yeah, the yoga breath, chin in, head on top of neck, not here, so that we can get that connection with it, make the diaphragm work harder, tone the lungs, you know, really get those lungs working well. I remember when I did my first teacher training, the senior teacher, who was amazing, her walking around the room, and she was showing us, demoing her slow breathing, and she was like, and I mean, I was speeding that one up a bit, you know, she was just doing this really slow breathing, and I was like, oh my God, like, how does she do that? Because I was still pretty rapid in my breathing. I was still, you know, just coming out of my TV career and stuff, and I was busy. And I actually realized that I wasn't really breathing, that for most of the stuff that I was doing, I was holding. So most of the yoga that I was doing was actually kind of gymnastics, where I was just holding everything in, and I was unbelievably tense. So if I can train my lungs to slow right down and expand, and I can drop down to 4-5 breaths a minute, anyone can. Yeah, anyone can. It's totally possible. And it's such a joy, honestly, to feel like your body is working with you, that you can actually control the adrenaline and then bring it down, and notice the endorphins and enjoy them. And, you know, when you have got a bit of that, then let it happen, but not go tip over into the horrible fuzziness, brain fog fuzziness, where it's because we have just got too many stress hormones, and we just don't have, therefore, enough of our progesterone being produced, the calming hormones. So breath, if you know you're not breathing well, do something about it. It is literally our life force. I can't emphasize that enough. And of course, that's linked into how your posture is, because it's almost impossible to breathe fully and deeply even if our shoulders are slightly rolled forward and these pectoral muscles are slightly tight. What will happen is our pelvis will move forward to compensate. And now I'm just going to move here so you can see me. If our shoulders are slightly forward, our pelvis will move slightly forward. So even if our rib cage is thrusting and it looks like the bum is still behind us, the pelvis will come slightly forward with the shoulders. Head will always be over pelvis. So we'll start to get more and more of the head poke. And over time, you know that Asian look where we see people, you know, getting that overkyphosis, etc. So working on your posture, and again, I try and bring this into every class, unwinding the tension patterns in the Monday night release and replenish class. The posture and pelvic core class, obviously we do a lot of getting tall against the wall and back strengthening to help recalibrate the posture. And in my Have the Strong class, everything is where we are in alignment first and then moving from there, because I feel it's fundamental. So I wanted to just say, if you can, when you're on your phone and you're doing a bit of scrolling, Sam, since we were just talking about that, get on your tummy and come into Sphinx pose to do it. Yeah, get your kids to do this as well. So try and do a few of these kind of cobras, elbows down, shoulders away from ears, chin drawn back, where we're just activating the muscles between the shoulders here, strengthening the multifidus muscles around the spine, and basically doing the opposite of rolling shoulders forward and getting the back muscles a bit stronger. In this position, also easy to do a few of these wider arm shoulder drops, which gets us to stretch right into the pectoral muscles here. So spend a bit of time on your tum. And when you see your kids on the sofa doing that, say stop. And get them to get down on the ground, like we used to do when we were reading books. Do you remember? You know, when we used to read a book, we'd be lying like this. So doing the opposite of sitting. Obviously the opposite of sitting, also opening up the hip flexors. So a good lunge a day, or a few of those, is a good idea. And
A lunge, okay.
a lunge a day. So if you are working at your desk, in the membership, we've got lots of, you know, desk stretches, 4 or 5 minute desk stretches. Just get yourself up off your seat, straighten your spine. I've got my toes slightly in here, so I'm doing slight crocodile toes slightly in, heels slightly out. We want to have a straight spine, hinge from the hip joints to lengthen the spine. This is where all our vitality comes from. All the nerves of the body connect into the spine. So if we're all there, we're literally cutting off our life force. So by giving your spine a stretch, this or down dog is a goodie. But if you're in the office even, you know, you can be talking to somebody and just give yourself a stretch. And if they go, what are you doing? You say, I'm just giving myself a stretch. But do you know, it takes literally a couple of minutes. You could do it whilst you're putting the kettle on, but just move the pelvis and the spine. Yeah, so this my hip flexors here, the psoas muscles go into the lower back. So doing a couple of lunges, spine lengthening, and then I was going to just do a little promo on squats as well. So I have this in the bathroom boot camp, and I also put squats into most of those Hatha strengthening classes. The mighty squat is one of those fantastic activations where you get deep pelvic floor, deep transverse abdominal muscle, multifidus extensor muscles at the back, all activating, and really good strengthening on the glutes. And I cannot tell you, the people I'm working with one-to-one at the moment who have got back pain all have bums that are not working at all. So we need these guys to stabilize the pelvis. And if they're not working, what happens is the psoas muscles have to take over, and sometimes the pelvic floor muscles take over as well, and they become tight, tense, and you will get pain. And pain is the body's way of saying, help, listen to me. So when we acknowledge and look at and actually do something about the signals that the body's getting us, the body feels seen, and ultimately souls on this earth just want to feel seen. We just want to feel loved and seen. So if we keep ignoring pain and putting a Panadol or a codeine on top of pain, the body will find another way to get your attention, and it will always get worse and worse and worse and worse until you're incapacitated. So so there. Pelvic circling takes no time. You do it while you're brushing your teeth. You can do it while you're doing the kettle, whatever. This opens up the psoas muscle. Whilst you're doing it, you can focus on your breathing and just check in with your alignment. So you want nice slow breathing, but it helps to relieve congestion. Obviously, Helen, with your rib thrusting, just make sure you bring this back, and you might be wanting to go slightly further forward rather than back into that position. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Where somebody like Maria, who's more flat through the sacrum here, she wants to do the opposite. Rather than going into that, she wants to try and get her sitting bones wider and getting her bum high at the back part of the circle. Does that make sense? So squatting, so do some circling, squatting. I mean, try all different types. Feet forward, knees just a bit wider than hip width apart. The key thing is, imagine you've got a tail, somebody's pulling your tail back and behind, knees stay on top of ankles. Stop us before your pelvis starts to roll under. And then from that position, breath out like you're blowing out through a straw, like that, and just push the heels into the ground, because we want to make sure that we are able to get that spring through the legs. Breath out, it lifts the pelvic floor with the diaphragm, and then just don't push your pelvis forward at the end. And I would just do wide ones, you know, ones that are knees are closer together. Obviously, if you're doing wide ones, if you've got prolapse, we need to make sure we don't go too deep, and we need to make sure that weight of organs is on pubic bone and pelvic floor, not pelvis forward, because there, if we're in this position, the weight is going through the pelvic floor. We don't want that. I was just talking about you, Maria. Hi.
Hi, yeah.
So I just going over a couple of things that I feel can be most impactful on our pelvic health. We come to the end of the pelvic core month. So one of them is just getting in, like in the bathroom boot camp, getting in some squats, even just a couple. Go to the loo, finish, put the lid down, and just do 5. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, breathing out, 4, 5. And then you're more likely to do more. Washing your hands, bit of this. Obviously, if you're in a public toilet, it's a bit awkward, but in your own home. Yeah. So, Maria, I was just saying before about this pelvic circling, which is just one of those, it's just one of those movements that women's pelvises are made for. Yeah. When you have got a posterior tilt through the pelvis like you have, just to focus more on the back of that circle. So sitting bones wider and circling here, as opposed to pushing the pelvis forward. Mel, have you got a question about? Yeah.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Yeah, please do. Q&A.
I'm just interested in, well, obviously I'm coming in sort of a little bit as an outsider, but it's fascinating what you're doing and really interesting. You know, with pubic symphysis dysfunction, could you speak about that in relation to what you're showing us now? Is that relevant? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. So
can you tell us what that is?
Pubic symphysis dysfunction is when the pubic symphysis, which is where the pubic bone at the front connects, the connective tissue starts to shift, and you can get this kind of movement. So rather than it being nicely together like that, it can get a bit moved like that. And often you have a bit of pelvic tilt going on as well. So asymmetrical work, especially warrior poses, you know, where one foot's out to the side and the other foot's forward, can be very hard on a pubis symphysis situation. Similarly, anything on all fours, we will then, you know, if we're doing that, the strengthening for the core and the bum, that can be nasty. So stability, basically. So doing your squats, but keeping your pelvis, so keeping your feet a bit closer. So rather than going too wide on that, but anything symmetrical in order just to get everything knitted back together again is a good idea. So you do need to make sure your glutes are strengthening. And yeah, I'll just be doing a lot of squats. I'm a big believer in, if you have got a bit of disconnect with the pelvic area, if it feels like the muscles aren't firing like they could or should, then I think the compression shorts, and not those binding things that girls wear to make them look skinnier, not those, but postpartum, they're recommended, you know, the ones that go from here down to here, and they've got a gusset, which basically everything is just kind of being pulled in. So all of your core muscles, pelvic floor, glutes, everything's just kind of being given a bit of compression so that your brain can start making those muscles fire again. So they're not a long-term solution, but if you're having problems with pain, then in order to feel safe enough to start doing the exercises that are going to stabilize you, I think they're a good investment. And then, you know, getting adjustments, yes, to get the symmetry back into your pelvis again, but then you've got to do the work in order to keep that strength there. So on that, actually, the one other thing I was going to show you, which is to do with nervous system regulation as well. And I'm good. This is very surface, guys. So I'm just picking out the things I wish all women did. Yeah, at a basic minimum. Yeah. So we have oxytocin receptors at the top of our back, which is why, you know, evolutionary wise, it encouraged us to hug and get close and then have babies to propagate the species. And as I said before, when we extend our exhalation, we drop into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest state. It is, we have to be in that state to be able to heal and digest food properly and be able to eliminate properly. And I have found that, and I even had this one on my business card because I think it's so useful. When you lie on your back with your pelvis propped, which can be really nice, Mel, for relieving that pain. Pubis symphysis pain often refers into around your sacrum as well. And so, and, you know, you can get almost spasming all round. So this position can be really relieving of that, because the pelvic floor muscles just have all the weight of your organs comes off the pelvic floor. There's no pressure anywhere, so it just feels like a relief essentially. Look, the top of my back is getting pressure, so there's oxytocin receptors. So already just lying here can feel safe. Yeah, my diaphragm is above my heart, so with gravity it makes it easier for the diaphragm to push the breath out of my lungs. So I'm getting a natural extended exhalation. So just doing normal breath in, my breath out goes, ah. Yeah, so I'm lengthening the exhalation. Also, diaphragm and pelvic diaphragm, like I said before, they're all fascially connected. They're both fascially connected here. So I can, in this position, do conscious pelvic floor activation. If I've got prolapse, bladder or bowel or uterus prolapse, in this position, I've also got gravity working with me. So if I activate my pelvic floor muscles, breathe out, and I can get much more of a vacuum for those organs to draw back into their position, especially in this position for a rectocele, so a bowel prolapse. Other exercises that I do are better for cytocele, but this is good for rectocele and for uterine. It also helps the psoas muscles to soften if they're gripping all the time, and you get lower back pain. My lower back is off the bolster, yeah. So just here where the psoas muscles, they go from your inner thigh through your pelvic floor. You can feel them here at the front when they go through the hip flexor area. Then they go through the diaphragm, the lower part of the diaphragm, and then they attach into your lower back. So in this position, and especially because I remember long extended breathing, my brain is like, I'm safe. So I'm breathing, and then I'm naturally allowing those muscles just to soften. You know, if they've been holding, they can just start to soften and let go. So in this position, I can do conscious pelvic floor activations. So I won't go into, because that you guys do all that stuff with me anyway. But I can. This is a really useful position to do those pelvic floor activations to get stronger and more stable. Now, this would be really helpful for pubic symphysis in this position. I'm symmetrical here. But it's also such a great position just to allow everything to release and calm. And of course, we can also do baby pose in this position, stretch the inner thighs. These muscles go right into the pelvic floor. And if you've got tense inner thigh muscles, you can guarantee you've got tension around the pelvic floor area. So we can do all sorts of nice stretches, even into our hamstrings and calves, legs up, press the pelvis into the bolster. All sorts of things in this position, which is incredibly relieving for the whole pelvic area, and strengthening, and instantly calming for the nervous system, because you're in a slight inversion. So just spending like literally a couple of minutes at the end of the day with your pelvis up, legs up against the wall, or just like this, I can't tell you how, because I mean, you Maria, when we've done like just 3 buzzy bee breaths out in this position, I know you've said before, oh yeah, I can really feel the change there.
Can I just share how my lower back felt last week? It was quite strange. I just wonder whether I have relaxed my body too much in the spa pool. So literally, like every Sunday, I do a long run. So I've just been doing that every Sunday, and then I go into my gym, the stop pool, and they've got these jets, which is just at my height, just like massage my lower back, my legs, and it's a really good way of just relieving any tension. But when I got out of the spa pool, literally a week ago, so then therefore last week, it was every time I was kind of like bending down, it was like as if oh, there's a nerve there that it hit. It was really strange. I mean, I could just like walk, do anything, like normal. But as soon as I tried to like bend down a little bit, it was like, ouch, I felt something. I can't even describe that feeling. So anyway, on last Saturday, just gone, I carried on with my run and then went into the spa pool, and it seems to have fixed it. But this time around, I was making sure I was like kind of like activating my core, as it were, while I was being massaged. I was just really conscious of it. And then I'm fine this week. I was fine doing the evening session with you on Monday. I just can't understand that. I don't know, was I just too relaxed?
I was going to say to you, I would, every time you go for a run, before you go, rather than stretching things, active glutes. Like, so spend 5 minutes. I'm sorry, I'm so relaxed here. I'm really enjoying just lying down my back. It's I feel all like do squats, yeah. So you're going for a run, you want your glutes to be activated, especially because I know that you're a bit like that.
Yeah.
So do a good few rounds of your squats, even get on your back and do your bridges to switch your glutes on. Yeah, so that what they're like, oh, good, okay, I'm awake now.
Yeah.
And when you're running, you're much more likely to be not on the front of your foot, running through the heel, because your glutes have woken up, your hamstrings have woken up a bit. So I would do that. And also yeah, I mean, your core muscles are so important. And if you're bending, if you're doing something where you have just become a bit quadricep and knee dominant because you've been running and this is still tucked under, if you're then bending and you're not vigilant with bending, hinging from the hip joints, if you bent over and there was a little bit more strain on those multifidi muscles around the lumbar, yeah, here, then yes, going to tweak. But if you're aware of your core, and this is all switched on, and you're a bit more aware of working anatomically, correctly, then your body's kind of rewarding you by saying there's no pain. Well done. Keep doing. Doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so when I was bending down last week, I thought, okay, I'm gonna activate my core just to pick something up. Then it was fine. But it caught me when I was like, oh, I need to pick up something. Just was I thinking? And it was like, oh, it was just like that. Yeah.
You're doing so well though, because I also talked to Helen about this. It takes time to retrain the brain. So now, if I sneeze, the second before I sneeze, I've activated the pelvic floor. And I had a really big sneezing fit when we were in Scotland. And I'm really glad I was activating my pelvic floor, because I know I would have weed myself if I wasn't, because I was like big sneezes. But that takes time to train that. And similarly, if I'm lifting something or whatever now, I don't even go there as far as not activating pelvic floor and deep core muscles. Like it because I know the consequences of not. And I have been in that situation, especially post Olivia, where I had no core strength left, was so atrophied, and the enormity of pain, back pain when I tweaked my back and stuff before I reestablished that core strength. So I totally empathize with back pain. I know what it's like, and it's miserable, and you can't sleep and you can't do anything, and it's like having toothache, isn't it? It's awful. So now I just, if I'm lifting up anything, I always pelvic floor, deep core muscles, switch on, breathe out, breathe out, breathe out, keep the diaphragm high, keep the diaphragm high, put the thing down, release, circle my pelvis, make sure those muscles are released. And it just becomes habit. And then you just do it. And it's just something you do, and you don't even think about it. It's not a conscious thing. So you're there, you started, you're doing the actions. Helen, you are further down your journey now, aren't you? And look how much your life has changed just from doing it.
Yes. Yeah, it has. Did you want me to say about my week last week?
That would be cool. Yeah, I mean, obviously, that would be. I was very proud of you.
Last week, I was at a sailing event with my kids, and they always need volunteers to go on ribs. And the only time I volunteer is if I go with my husband, who can helm a rib, because I know that I can use a bucket in the rib, and that's okay. But we were put down together, but then we were split up in the scheduling, so I still had to honour what I did. And I was a bit nervous on the first day, because I thought, will I manage? Because you can't get back, you can't go to a loo, and you're out on the water for most of the day, and it was fine because of what Linda's taught me. So I was able to volunteer 2 more times, and went out on the water with such a confidence that I haven't had ever since I've been doing this, really. And it was just really liberating. So I was really proud of myself for that, and proud of Linda for everything that she does.
Oh, I love that you said that the girls, the fact that the girls were like, cool, and mum's helping. And
I actually had a correspondence with one of the organisers, and she said, thank you so much for your help on the water. It's great to see more females doing it, because it's true, it's mostly men that are out there, and I think it's a mixed sport. You have a lot of girls going out doing this racing all day, and for them just to see men in ribs all the time must be really disappointing, I think. So I think it's good to represent us lot.
It's
and
100%. And as we've discussed before, invariably, I mean, women will give every other excuse. They're not going to say it's because I'm worried about farting in front and not being able to contain a fart, or it's not, they're not going to say because of I just can't trust my bladder. They won't say that. They'll say everything else. You know, I've got to zip off and pick up somebody's on a lunch, or you know, any other excuse in the world. We're never going to say it's because I can't trust my body. But how cool that you are, being that example now, and I'm really, 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 really proud of you.
And even when I got up on shore, I didn't have to dash to the loo. I'd been out from 10:30 till about 4 o'clock. And when we got back on shore, because you can't whiz to the loo because you're in your many layers and dungarees and coats and buoyancy aids and what have you. And I didn't have to dash to the loo when I got back to the shore. It was amazing. Yeah.
And when you think about when you started with me, and you know, your story of having to always dash to the loo, and I remember how stressed you were about that.
Yes, it was nice that you have that phrase that's a latchkey leak, and I thought I was the only one in the world who had it, but then to learn that there was actually a phrase for it was eye-opening and comforting.
I'm really, really happy for you, and that's cool. Really, really cool. Oh, well, Sam, do you have a question or a contribution?
I have a question, actually, if that's okay, if we're still good for time. Of those things then that you discussed as the key pieces, one of the things I'm very conscious that I struggle most of all with is the posture piece. And because I feel like different parts of my body are needing different things, and which is confusing, but I'm also very conscious that some of it is because of the weight I carry as well, that I find it hard to feel all the things that you ask us to feel. Like I just can't feel it. And then there's with that plus this contradiction piece where when I, for example, as an example of where there's a contradiction, as I straighten my spine, it seems to be that it hurts my lower back more, even rather than less. And so there's bits like that where it's like, I know my bum naturally sticks out. I've got quite a curved spine, so bringing it in, but then it feels a tightness to bring it in. So things like that, where there's that contradiction in the weight. Any suggestions for where posture can be improved for that?
Well, I'm going to see you at OWC, aren't I? So I'll be able to put my hands on you, which is always helpful, because it could be that, like Helen, and like me, there's actually a bit of rib thrust there, so that when you think you're straightening your back, you're still getting the rib thrust. So and it just means that the pain or the compression comes up the spine a little bit. So it could be that. A lot of people who think they have got overlordosis, so too much curvature in the back, actually have a relatively flattened out sacrum. And Maria, you know, you've got quite a flattened out sacrum, and so it isn't so much straightening the spine, it's more about drawing the rib cage back, and then of course that means shoulders readjustment and head readjustment. So it's more of a whole trunk readjustment, and it starts at the feet. So it's one of those things that I think in the release and replenish class, I'm going to start making more of an emphasis on this. When we get into the, so the whole point of that class is I want to be able to get you to the end of it so that you feel the whole of your body. You know, I always say feel underneath the skin surface of the whole of your body. So you kind of and try and do this now with me, in the, 40 to 80 trillion cells, and then feel the space around your body. So, you know, we've got our kind of our aura or our astral body, and then our causal bodies. The energy that we are in, the space that we take up, helps us to then orientate this vessel that we're in space as a whole entity, as a fluid entity, you know, that we've got so much water content of the body. So rather than it being a mechanistic, okay, head here, pelvis tuck, hang on, that hurts back, what's it, where's that pain? Oh, I can't remember what she said about the feet, like, and it all being a separate thing, you know, that you're trying to, oh, I think I fixed this bit, but now this bit feels odd, etc. And Helen, we on retreat, I remember you know, you were doing what you thought was right, but then you could just see the tension that you were creating in your back. Yeah. So I think potentially I need to emphasize more of getting into a state where you feel the space around your whole body and can start to almost readjust from your core, the core of your being, up, down, side to side, all at the same time. So it becomes more of a fluid and integral realignment of yourself, which will progress over time. I probably didn't explain that at all, and that's just something that's forming in my brain right now, but it feels like rather than me saying, oh, Sam, I think you should work more on your extension exercises to stop the rounding of the shoulders, you know, that will help. And yes, 100%, I would say work on your extension exercises, which is, you know, that sort of Shalabhasana, you know, Superwoman, you know, Shalabhasana, we were activating all of the back line and your bum, releasing down, activating, releasing down. But yes, I mean, I'd say, yes, do this and do this and do this to start stacking those bits better. But if we all just spent more time not in the head trying to deconstruct, but in the whole of this vessel, and kind of tuning into the connectivity of all the elements, I think a lot of tension, misalignment, this is wrong, would just dissipate.
I loved it when you did a session on it was probably the Monday evening, I can't remember, but it was when Queen Elizabeth had died, and you referred to her a lot and the way she presented herself, not just physically, but as her character, and obviously with the crown and the ermine cloak. But it was a really lovely session, because all of us were trying to kind of absorb some of those elements of her in our beings. And it was really beautiful.
That's such a lovely reminder. Yeah. And it is, because, and that's why, I mean, I keep saying our core house, there's a core wealth, you know, because physically, pelvic floor and deep core and uterus area, that, you know, this is the core of our being. And when we're disconnected from our core, everything is out of balance. But it's also the core of who you are, and that allowance of taking up space. And the Queen did epitomize that. She didn't apologize for anything. She didn't think she knows everything. She would but she was in her body, wasn't she? She just had that mana. In the Maori languages, it's the mana is that inner strength, and I think that is integral also to being in the body and finding your aligned posture. So you're absolutely right, embodying that inner queen energy will help find that alignment, and it also helps the nervous system, because when we are in head, where's my head, where's my body, I can't even feel my pelvis, can't feel anything under my belly, you know, when we're in that, our nervous system is like, you're not safe, you're not acting safe, your body is not acting safe, your body's acting like it needs to run away, or it's about to be attacked and it's frozen. Do you know what I mean? So part of us becoming totally embodied people, human beings in this lifetime, is that remembering who we are, you know, remembering isn't getting back into the member of this. You don't see a toddler, do you? You see a toddler with a beautifully straight back, bum, nice rounded tummy. They drop down into a deep squat, they get up, they move around, they sleep and their belly moves. And then as they get older and they get on, you know, we put them in car seats and all the rest of it, then the tension patterns start. But if you look at indigenous cultures, they still have beautifully straight backs, big bums, strong bums, move fluidly, gracefully. So there isn't that disconnect. The body and the brain and the mind, the soul is one. So us taking time to remember and reestablish the vessel, but also, you know, the Mel, that we're doing and things, and you know, and stuff we talk about, Sam. It's finding who you are in this life, and you know, doing the stuff. I always talk, you know, Ishvara Prana and yoga is such a beautiful concept. It means you have your North Star, you kind of know which direction you want to go in, you have your, it's more of a feeling of what you want in this life to feel fully expressed. And it might be a feeling of a family, or what you feel called to do. And you take the individual actions to kind of move yourself in that direction. And sometimes you're going to go off track, but you kind of, you know, it's in the general direction, but it's not with a clasping to a certain outcome. It's not a, I have to get there, otherwise I won't be successful. Ishvara Pranadhara means you're in a state of grace where you are working with the collective consciousness. You're working with something that is bigger than yourself. And when you are that, you stand like that. You breathe, you know, it's that there's a time for this, there's a time for that, and it's okay. So yeah, just pulled in a bit of the kind of the ultimate of the yoga wisdom, because it's so relevant, I think, to everything. It's that bringing back to the whole, the rebalancing.
That's really a fascinating way of putting it, actually, because I obviously work more on the mental and the internals, rather than the physicals. So hadn't seen that same correlation on the physical side as much as the way you just described it, because when I think about working on with the way I do in the mind and how that starting with the mind and then going through, rather than starting with the physical and going that way. The you know, quite often in the same sort of way that you just said with physical, it's about not going from this feeling straight to this feeling to this, and just keep digging, because you can just spend your whole life digging and digging and digging and not actually being in a state of peace and happiness. You actually then achieve the opposite sometimes by doing too much self-development work. You can actually make yourself less developed, for want of a better phrase. So it's interesting having that same metaphor on the physicality as well, because that makes so much more sense. Yes, because that's where the question had come from, because if I consciously go, oh, okay, so tuck my ribs in, well, then I'm like, oh, but my pelvis has just come forward, so that's not good. So that, but and then my shoulder, and it feels like complete isolation almost has a domino effect in a more out of kilter way, rather than as a whole out of kilter. Where's the strengthening as a whole?
And like Helen just said, you know, when we do rise from the crown into the crown, and I like to do that, you know, imagine you've got a string from here and also the ridge of your head, just, and you're like a puppet on strings. So the lengthening upwards, and then allowing the body to just drop downwards, almost like a puppet just hanging. And when you are feeling the whole of your body and the space around your body, so I hope that makes sense. It's almost like you are aware of, you feel the air on your skin, and you're really aware of every bit of the body together as one thing, as one unit of condensed energy sitting in the less condensed vibration of energy that's around you. And you lift through the crown, and then you feel the feet rooted into the earth, and your body is a conduit of energy. Then I feel like it's a bit easier for you to then go, and my alignment is whereas pelvis, is it forward or is it back? Hang on a second, what's my shoulder doing? What's it? But just feel the being that conduit, you know, the length, and have a play with that. And I totally hear what you're saying as far as we think that we need to work out everything that's here in order to heal ourselves, but actually sometimes just focusing on just almost being in that acceptance. I've got a little shit, you know, Santosha, it's there. I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to sit with it. Parents aren't going to change anytime soon. So what I am going to focus on is just regulating my nervous system, just being in my body a bit more. And it's like a first step. And it's like I really feel now that when we allow ourselves to give ourselves the permission to do what we know, you know exactly what you need to do right now. You know you need to spend more time in nature, around trees, grounding, breathing, getting to your alignment. You know, I don't need to tell you that. And but when we do those things and we don't go, oh, I would, but actually I've got to sort out such and such as GCSE, whatever, or I've got to help this, you know, I've got to do the things that make me a good mum or a good friend or a good worker or a good business owner, blah. But we go, actually, first thing is just to acknowledge and be grateful for the fact that I actually even have a vessel. I'm even alive in this moment in time. It's extraordinary how then the other stuff stops being an emergency. It stops being so big. I don't know, just dissipates a bit. Mel, you're a counsellor. Yeah.
No, I was just about to go, but no, I can take another couple of minutes, but I don't think I need to add anything to what you just said, because it's just beautiful and
That's
feels
what you teach too, isn't it? I know it is.
yeah, and it's so refreshing, because a lot of people are just so fixated on the pieces and getting it all together one by one and in linear fashion, even in yoga, I find sometimes. And just to let the body be organized by these other means, and then within that do what you're doing, which is really very expert. It's really been fantastic. I'm sorry I can't stay. I really want to hear more.
Well, we must wrap up too. So it's so lovely. Thanks guys for joining. Helen, if you've got another good, bye Mel, darling.
Bye. Nice to see you again, Sam.
Yeah,
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Helen, have you got a last question that I can?
No, it was just in terms of posture, it does help to have the inner strength to be able to do that, to hold yourself, as we've just been talking about. And I was just, it was a question. It's going back to sorting out individual bits. Sorry, but I'm. So at home, I'm surrounded by people who are doing weights all the time. I've got, big, strong teenage boys, and it's quite an energy in the house. And I'm trying to sort of tap off that energy and use it for me as well. I just wanted to know what you didn't speak about today was very much, it was about sort of the tummy area doing lots of work, and I just wanted to check that I'm doing something that's useful to do. I'm doing a lot of the lying on your back and doing the cycling things, and just trying to get that whole core area to tighten up. That is one of my bugbears about me, is that I'm not overweight, but I have this sort of saggy, flabby tummy, and I think that is all to do with why I get back pain, because this area is not as strong as perhaps it should be, and I'm using the what do they call, the multi-fili at the back. So I was just thinking, is that an area to focus on a bit more in my household of let's get strong?
So what I would say about that is, knowing your back, give me my phone. I would the worry about doing cycles, with the fact that you have a bit of rib thrust here. Can you see that naturally, if I'm doing this, the pain, I'm basically using my psoas, and it's going into right where your pain is, right here. Yeah, I'm not actually strengthening my core at all. So I would, if I was you, be focused on breathing so that my lower rib cage at the back drops into the ground and the front of the rib cage drops down. And you might have to prop your head a little bit in order for that to happen comfortably. Yeah, so now rib cages drop down, back of the rib cage is on the ground. My deep transverse abdominal muscles are working now. And I would do maybe as a standard daily thing to work on this pelvic floor zipping up in this position, Helen. So there's none of that happening in this rib cage down position, so that you're working on pelvic floor, deep transverse abdominal muscles, obliques, and the external recti muscles having to activate here as well. And maybe leg slides, but very focused on the back of the rib cage being down. I'd kind of, if we get to this, it's once you have got enough strength to keep the back of the rib cage down, because this will pull you up if you're not really already strong through here. Does that make sense? So
yeah, don't do many, because
I do a lot of the crocodile crunch, because it's kind of like the cycling, but because we've put ourselves into alignment first, and then we're staying here crown lifted, so staying in this position, and then we're doing core, pelvic floor core. All of this is moving this, yeah, working deep core muscles, but without that happening. So you can, when people say you can't just work on, you know, your tummy, you can, but you've just got to be super careful that you're not doing so in a position where you're actually just creating more misalignment and then tension patterns. Also, when you're lifting weights, etc., you know, if you're doing squats and you've got, hang on a second, I'll grab some weights. If you're doing a pushing up, because I'm in alignment then and consciously pulling right up pelvic floor and then zipping up the core muscles and adding those weights, I'm doing it, you know, my core is working hard. So if you are wanting to do weight sessions with the boys, I mean, some of the Hatha Strong classes, I'm using weights as well, and you can just add more weights. So just, yeah, I mean, I'd just be really vigilant with making sure that when you're doing stuff, you're here, your rib cage is down. You're not then doing that, but it just rib cage is back. So we have a little curve here, but not here. And Sam, it sounds like a little bit like that might be your situation too. So you can see the trouble is, if I do,
I always thought I had an
my
overcurve.
head might go forward. So that's why it is a little bit of that crown lifted and just feeling like you're dropping off. This is a hard one to reconfigure because it's happened over a lifetime. You know, we've got a lifetime of that slight lift and thrust, and often after pregnancies, because obviously the diaphragm gets pushed right up, the lungs get pushed right up in pregnancies. Many women don't have that recalibration postnatally. It's very common. And they think they have got overlordosis, so they're constantly tucking their tail under, yeah, to compensate. But it's further up the chain. It's actually the rib cage which is lifted at the front.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that, because also I've been consciously trying to open my rib cage, but actually probably in a way that's making that worse, because I thought it was an overcurvature as opposed to rib thrust, because I've been doing that a lot as opposed to rolling. It's been more of a push out, which of course is then just pushing the rib cage out even more.
Exactly, that's exactly it. Yeah. So Helen, does that make sense with the cycles? I would be, yeah, maybe put something under your head to start off with, just so that you can really feel the back of the rib cage on the ground. Work on core. I mean, it doesn't look like nothing much is happening. That looks more oppressive, but actually this is strong, you know, doing these and then one toe tap and then two, but whilst this is on the ground. And do your you know, on your tummy, and the same extension things that I was saying to Sam to do, you know, where we're lifting the whole body, in order just to wake up all of your back muscles and your gluteal muscles, and get that, and that's core strengthening too.
Thank you, that's great. And just to add, when I went to the physio last year about my back, I said, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing this and this is what I'm trying to do, and I'm also doing these exercises and da da da. And she said, you know what, I think you just need to relax.
I remember you saying that.
Because if you're like, oh, I've got to do all these things, she said, yeah, that's creating tension in itself. So back to the whole thing of, yeah.
And that's why I keep saying, number one is release and replenish class. because we all like, oh my God, I've got to do this and with the pelvic floor, and I've got to do this and strengthen, and I've got to do my bones are degenerating. I've got to do my we've got to relax. We've got to get into the body and relax. Well, learn to and trust. Yeah, Ishvara Pranahara is that trusting that by taking those steps one at a time, generally in that direction, that we will get there. So it might be messy, it might not look exactly like we imagined it would look, but and it is that trusting life thing, isn't it, Sam? From all right, if you've got no more questions, 12:15, so better wrap up. But thank you so much for showing up and your lovely share, Helen. Thank you for that. That's super cool. And have a lovely rest of your day, a lovely weekend.
Thank you, and to you. That was a fabulous Q&A. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye.